Hey guys, welcome back to the At the Coffee Table podcast. I am Jason Klink, and this is episode 61. Today, I am joined by Ben Albert. Ben and I connected through a local networking group, and I wanted to bring him on today to talk a little bit about marketing, a little bit about podcasting, and anything in between. And just give you a little background for Ben. He started podcasting in 2016 when he launched the Rochester Groovecast Podcast to highlight the local music scene in Rochester. He has over 100 episodes of that podcast and has built it up to a top-ranked podcast. In 2020, Ben launched the Rochester Business Connections. It's a podcast that highlights the business community in Rochester and has 50 episodes of that podcast. It's been a great networking resource, I'm sure. And he's also been building up his marketing business under Balbert Marketing. And last but not least, is Ben also teaches podcasting to two different high schools within Rochester. So Ben, thank you for joining me and welcome to the show.
Jason Klink, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Great. It's great to have you here, and it's great to have a fellow podcaster on the show. I feel like I'm still relatively new at this, even though it's 61 episodes later and just over a year later. I joke all the time about, not joke, but kind of tongue in cheek, that I probably wouldn't have started this podcast if it wasn't for the pandemic lockdown, because it gave me the time to jump off that cliff and get it going. And now it's a lot of fun for me. And I'm glad that I finally made that jump. How did you kind of transition to where you are between the two different successful podcasts?
I'm with you. I wouldn't host either of my podcasts currently if it wasn't for the pandemic. Rochester Groovecast, as you mentioned, it's a Rochester music-based podcast. And at the end of the day, it was 2016. I never really graduated from college. I did graduate, but I didn't seem to act like it. And I was still going to music. I was still going to music 3, 4, 5 times a week, if not more. And
Right.
I'm a huge music advocate. So I started that podcast simply in the fact that I felt like I was just kind of just a consumer. I wasn't really adding much value to the music scene. And I wanted to get into places for free. So I started Rochester Groovecast back in 2016, and I had slowed down. I mean, I would go months without, I went almost a year without releasing an episode. And I basically had put it on the side. I was booking bands. I had other endeavors. I had my full-time role, which was my main focus. And then when the COVID hit, that's when I brought Rochester Groovecast back. We would do something similar to this. Everything was live streamed. So we would live stream, so we'd have an audience. We'd release it as a podcast, but the beauty was in the live stream and using the virtual realm. The podcast used to always just be audio. So that's just a long way of saying when COVID hit, I relaunched that podcast, which was a blessing. And then it wasn't until November rather, that I launched the business podcast again, coming out of this virtual world and this going crazy thing that happened when COVID first hit. Podcasting has been a tremendous medium for me, you, and probably a lot of the listeners as well.
Right. And it's, I've consumed a lot of content over the last few years, and, you have the social media gurus like Gary Vee and so on. And I think it was like 2 years ago, and it was got to be on audio, do podcasts. I'm like, well, I would, thinking to myself that would be fun, but how the hell do I do a podcast? And it's been an interesting ride for me. I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can relate, but of constantly bringing that value and having interesting people on and reaching out and just saying, hey, do you want to come on, and like I did with you, hey, you want to come on and talk on my podcast? What have you seen? How have you seen it evolve over the last few years as far as podcasting goes?
Well, podcasting, I mean, we could take this in so many directions. I mean, 10 plus years ago, it was only audio. You could definitely niche up. Like, there wasn't many podcasts per any particular random niche. Nowadays, there's millions of podcasts. We're creating more each day.
Yeah.
And a lot of things are videos, and it's even confusing. Is it a podcast? Is it a video broadcast? What do you even
Right.
call it? Is this really even a podcast if I'm on camera? A lot has changed where, yeah, it's a completely different world than it used to be, which brings a lot of opportunities and brings a lot of challenges as well. I mean, just to say an opportunity, what I love about the video element, and I'll tell you this, Jason, I do not watch video podcasts. If you're watching this right now, I love you that more. If you're listening to it, you're me, because I listen to podcasts. I do it when I'm working out, when I'm on the go. But
Yes.
one thing
Yes.
that's great about the video element, coming from a marketing sales background, is they recognize your face. They can
Yes.
relate to you. They see the
Yep.
humanity. There's one thing that's beautiful about a podcast is the humanity in your voice, the connection to you as I'm
Right.
listening to you. And the video element just brings a whole nother secret sauce where even if someone were to turn this off right now, I sure hope you don't. If you're watching this, you see my face. And if you're listening to it, I can say, check out the video version. Put a face to the name. So that's a whole
Right.
new element that never existed when podcasts first came out,
That's a huge point because I know a lot of my favorite podcasts. I know that if I don't have the time to sit and watch their YouTube version or a live stream version, that they're going to be on Spotify and I can go and take a run and listen to it or get in the car and listen to it. And it really creates an opportunity to hit all of those mediums and, still, interact with the audience one way or the other, either audio or visual.
Yeah, it's just another way to reach people. I'll say, wow. So you gotta enjoy doing the podcast, right? And that's why you're
Right.
doing this, Jason, because you enjoy it. But the
Yep.
second element is reaching people, marketing your business,
Hmm.
and the more places you are, the better. So if you like
Right.
visual me, you're probably crazy. If you like audio me, that makes more sense. There's Instagram me, there's LinkedIn me. The
Yep.
video element just brings a whole new aspect to the fold for sure.
Absolutely. So obviously for you, the podcast came before the marketing business, correct?
Yes, the music podcast did.
Did okay. So is that the catalyst? The music podcast, was that the catalyst into creating your marketing business, or was that always kind of there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and as you know, a lot of little parts lead to the whole. And instead of writing an entire autobiography, I can kind of just give you the bulleted points.
Okay.
Um, but I started that music podcast for fun, right? And
All right.
back then I was in retail, then I was doing road shows, then I was doing sales for Chobani Yogurt,
Oh
and
wow.
then also found myself in marketing and online marketing roles. So
Hmm.
there's a lot that happened in my past, right? Loving music and starting a podcast, doing sales, learning marketing, that I utilized the podcast and I leveled up, you could say, and started booking bands in the Rochester, New York area and
Oh.
started promoting events in the Rochester, New York area. And
Hmm.
the ROI on my time was virtually nothing. It wasn't a big money driver, but it gave me the opportunity to build a lot of skill sets. And
Hmm.
then working, in a more corporate level marketing industry, that gave me the opportunity to learn a lot of skill sets in terms of marketing and sales and implementing these plans. Where when COVID hit and I left my previous company and started Balbert Marketing, actually in August, I
Oh wow.
launched Rochester Business Connections in November, which honestly the first 10, 20 episodes were sloppy, even though I had practice and they were still sloppy, but it looked
Right.
like it looked genius. It really was luck because I took, 100, less than 100 at the time, but 100 episodes of my one podcast, my marketing knowledge, my
Hmm.
love of technology, and wrapped it all together to do a 22 episode launch in November. I did an episode a day every Monday through Friday. And in doing that, I got to meet so many people. I didn't have to join a country club or a BNI group or go to a million networking meetings to have one-on-one coffee with these people. I just set up a podcast and did over 20 one-on-ones in the course of a month to do a launch in November. And then all of that goodwill basically led to more introductions and more opportunities. And it really is that simple. I started a podcast and had great conversations, and then I asked for recommendations for the show. But it was the learning podcasting and doing it for free on the side and learning marketing and kind of developing the skill set that put me in a position to really just kind of a kick-ass launch of, I don't know if I've prefaced it, Rochester Business Connections. Again, I did Rochester Groovecast, Rochester, New York, Rochester Business Connections, Rochester, New York. I know that there is I'm an average size fish in a small pond rather than being an average size fish in a huge freaking pond. So I like to go hyper local. And I like to point out the hyper local aspect because that's a great way in a vast wasteland of podcasts. Go hyper local, hyper niche. I like you because you talk about the firehouse. You talk about your experience there. If I were to just start personal development 101 or marketing 101, there's probably 101,000 podcasts just like that. So I'm rambling. Yep. I like that your show is personalized to you, and that's what I did for myself. I personalized it to me and my community.
Yeah, that was my thing when I started this. Is I didn't want the basis is and I've said it before is the basis is behind all my years in the firehouse. We sit around the kitchen table and have a cup of coffee or three and solve all the world's problems. And I just wanted that general element, but I didn't want to make it a firehouse-based show. There's enough of those. And I wanted just to be able to come on and meet cool people and have conversations. I've had everybody from personal trainers to business development people. I had Trevor Cowley on from Real Business Owners. And that was kind of cool because when I started this, I did the same thing. I was keeping it real local and just trying to highlight people around the area. And then I was listening to Real Business Owners podcast, and Trevor was saying, well, people that are successful, they just want to help. But a lot of people are just afraid to ask. So I went, what the hell? So I said, hey, Trevor, DM, would you be on my podcast? And this was at this point last year. And he's like, yeah, sure, absolutely. When do you want to do it? And I was floored. But I think it highlights the connections that we're able to make doing this type of thing. And like I said, it's just a lot of fun.
I agree. I mean, you started smaller, then you went bigger. Rochester Business Connections, that podcast has a brand new series. I've only put out one episode, but it's called Learn, Speak, Teach. And it's talking to top thought leaders across the world to bring them to the community. So I started with my local community, but now I'm leveraging my skill set and my network to kind of branch off to larger people that are out of my league to bring them to my community. And then no one really knows, but I'm probably going to take that new podcast and then turn that into its own podcast. But I'm starting again with this smaller show to try to build up and then build a larger show long term. Playing the long game for sure.
I was going to say what I'm picking up on is it's very strategic, and there's a means to the beginning and the end.
And I want to interject. It actually, the things I say sound like, oh, that's brilliant, and honestly, you should go implement them. I'm figuring this out. This was not my strategy. When I launched the business, it was literally like, I'm not good at much other than marketing and podcasting. Don't have any clients. I have a not compete. Let's start a podcast and see where it goes. It ended up working, and then I ended up finding people that do this. But it wasn't even strategic. So take it with a grain of salt. This is me beta testing and learning things that a lot of people
Okay.
don't do. A lot of people don't do, but you can take what I stumbled upon, and then if you're extra strategic, I guarantee you can lap me with your strategy. Because I don't want people to think that I had a master plan, because I didn't. I'm figuring this stuff up like in the shower, in the morning. I'm like, wait, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like,
That's awesome. That's awesome because it's funny because I do my best thinking at like 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm wide awake for some stupid reason. And
yeah.
I never am ambitious enough to sit up and write it down because by 9 o'clock, when I'm thinking about it again, I forgot about everything that I created in my own head at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So, I was talking to a fellow podcaster not too long ago. I've had too much caffeine today.
Yeah.
And she was telling me how with her podcast, she group records. So she's not doing I'm doing the one-on-one live stream and creating an episode. She'll take a month and create 4 or 5 episodes and then release them over the next month. Do you see any value to doing it one way or over the other?
So you're talking about, okay, so you said group record. That's
Yeah,
not
like
having
batch.
like,
Yeah, like
okay.
batch record. Yeah.
At first, when you said that, I was thinking of like a panel. I don't know if
Oh
anyone
yeah.
else might have
That
thought that.
that's one of my
Okay.
next questions on that one. But no, I was talking like batch recording. So,
Got it.
taking 4 or 5 guests, do each of those episodes and then release them over the next month. But do those batch episodes kind of all in the same week.
I'd say yes and no. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
as in that's exactly what I did. This is live, so obviously people can
Yeah.
see it now, but
Right.
I'm you can listen to these at any time. I pre-recorded. I'm pre-recorded until September right now. And again, that wasn't strategy, that was accident. When I would have Jason on my show, when you come on my show, I'd have Jason on my show, and then I'd ask for recommendations, and then Jason would give me 3, and then
Mm-hmm.
2 would stick, and then I'd have 2 people per one, and I'm only doing one a week. So before you know it, I'm pre-recording, and I'm accidentally pre-recorded through summer, which is incredible because then I can enjoy the summer a little bit and focus more on my business and other things. So I do
Right.
encourage batch recording, pre-recording a month at a time sounds great. The one thing that I discourage that I'm falling into, that's why I put a hold on booking guests, is I'm not going to shout it out. I don't even know if it's ever going to come out. Maybe he just thinks I did a terrible job. I recorded a podcast in February.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, it's freaking June, mid-June, and there is I don't think this podcast is ever going to come out. I don't know if he just
Oh
lost it
wow.
and doesn't want to tell me, but I
Oh.
recorded like February 2nd, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
end of June, and it hasn't come out yet.
Hmm.
So I don't like that. I don't even remember what I said. So
Right.
the issue that I'd focus on, I'd keep in mind with pre-recording and batch recording, is there's a recency bias that I get off here with Jason. It's live. I'll go share it. I'll connect it. It's recent. It's energetic. You kind of lose momentum if it comes
Right.
out a month, 2 months. Like my podcasts aren't coming out for 2 months, and I actually don't like that, and I think it's a disservice to my guests. So it's a yes and no.
Okay.
It's yes, pre-record if you're more comfortable that way. Batch
Right.
record, do 4 in a week, but don't find yourself in the position that you're not putting podcasts out until 3, 4, 5 months after, because it just emotionally is not as fun. You lose a lot of momentum
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. And it almost seemed like if it was 3, 4, 5 months, you almost lose the relevancy depending on changes
Right.
in the world, a pandemic hits, all that kind of stuff. So I want to touch back. I want to
I'm just
touch
thinking
back.
of I'm just thinking of pre-pandemic conversations like in
Yeah.
February or early March, and then it
Right.
doesn't come out till June, and people are like, "What the heck is this guy
What?
talking about?"
Right. The world is great, and everybody's in lockdown. Yeah. Yeah. um. So one of the things I want to touch on or what was my next thing was I recently came up with an idea after reading a John Maxwell book on leadership, and I did one episode of a roundtable, and I got 3 young ladies that came on, and we were talking about personal development. And the live stream was somewhat successful, but when I reposted it and repurposed it for Instagram, it was super successful. So I started to think, all right, well, it had some legs and it's great. And maybe this roundtable idea has, but now I'm kind of teetering on do I keep it a part of at the coffee table, or do I turn this roundtable and kind of what you were saying, kind of morph it into something else, because it kind of fits its own little avenue or its own lane versus, at the coffee table.
Yeah. You could go either way. I like it as
Yeah.
its own entity. I also
Right.
like it as a scheduled thing, whether you do it monthly, once a week, twice a month. It can
Right.
be as part of at the coffee table, but you would want to do it semi-regularly, so it would kind of
Mm-hmm.
build its own brand in itself. It's like the once a month roundup. It's a terrible name, but
Right.
we're spitballing here.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
or it could be its entire. It could be its whole own show. My first inclination is to have it part of at the coffee table because it's just a part of something you've already built.
Right.
It's harder. It's harder to build that from scratch.
Yep.
But it could be its own show, or if you're doing it, I would do it semi-regularly, just so people don't get really excited, and then another round table doesn't happen for 90 days. Same
Right.
concept.
Right. Yeah. So I've had some shows that were, I've had a lot of shows that were a lot of fun. They went really well. I had one or two that were kind of like, eh. Um, have you hit both ends of those spectrums of, yeah, wow, that was a rock star show, or that was just kind of flopped?
Yes.
um, any bigger name guests, or people that might have you had on the show that you might not have thought you could connect with, and ended up on either one of your shows?
Yeah, I mean, it just blows my mind. A lot of my guests aren't big names, like, they're not on the news, or they don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have a huge following.
Mm-hmm.
But they're millionaires, they're successful business people. The fact that I, again, didn't have to join the country club to shake their hand blows my
Right.
mind in itself.
Right.
And I've had I'm more introverted by nature, so it's hard for me to be on 24/7. So I've
Yeah.
definitely had moments where I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want someone to look it up, but there's been moments where my guests are very intellectual on a
Mm-hmm.
very specific topic. And in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, they actually probably could have simplified it for me. But the questions I were asking, like, I don't think I sound like I have any clue what I'm talking about. I have gotten positive feedback. Like,
Right.
you ask good questions, you ask beginner questions. I needed clarification on that too. But there's been times where I'm literally spacing out because I just can't follow the guest, or I'm exhausted and the introvert in
Right.
me just wants to take a nap.
Right.
But it's growing. Like, to answer
Yeah.
the first part, my most recent podcast that came out last week was with David Mamano.
Mm-hmm.
David Mamano is a great person. He started the Avanti Entrepreneur Network. He started educational magazines and a whole ecosystem that was basically he's a entrepreneur that got nationwide recognition. And in his podcast, some people know the name, some people don't, but he's had Grant Cardone on. He's had
Oh,
Ed
wow.
Milet on. He's had Kevin Harrington on. He's
Wow.
had Rudy Giuliani on. Um,
Wow.
and he's had basically, I was telling my girlfriend kind of embarrassingly, I'm like, he's the person I'm going to be in the future. Now, granted, my goal, and I'm sure he wouldn't be offended, I want to lap him. I want to be better than him. But
Sure.
he has accomplished so many of the things I'm looking to accomplish with his network and his guests that
Mm-hmm.
having him on the show was just a great way for me to get a taste of the magic and learn from him. And again, David Mamano, that's a great episode for anybody to listen to, and it should be at the top of the list. So you can check that out after this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so I had a question and it just flew out of my brain. That's fun. Uh,
See, that's
yeah.
what happens to me. That's
Yep.
exactly what happens to me, and then I end up like, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah. How do I cover this? So with I'll ask you this, and then that way I'll cover myself. What's in the future for your podcast, your business? How are you proceeding forward? Sky's the limit. Your 360-degree view. Where do you see yourself headed?
That's a great question. I don't know if I want to get deep into the business plan. At
Hmm.
at in reality, I'm being honest with you, Jason. I'm being honest with everyone. I started this business in August. It is June. It hasn't been a full year. And if you
Hmm.
were to look at growth and metrics and sales, I'm doing incredible. But it's hard for me to project. Anyone who started a business, has been in sales, they're an entrepreneur, they kind of have to build a book of business. They know that it's hard to project and you need to be able to pivot and change based on COVID and weird stuff
Hmm.
happening. Right now, my focus is growing out Rochester Business Connections. I want to launch, learn, speak, teach another podcast, which again, one episode exists, but it's more of a well rounded education show for a national audience. I want to bring in a lot of speakers, educators, coaches, those kind of people. Um, and I really just want to keep building out Balbert Marketing because the one tip that I guess I have is what works really great about Balbert Marketing is the fact my name is Ben Albert. The company's Balbert. I do acquisition. I do fulfillment. I do all the
Hmm.
stuff that's actually going to exhaust people long term, but you don't have to deal with a complex ecosystem of you never know who's going to pick up. You can't text the person. You feel like all the approaches are, square peg round hole, nothing's tailor made. What works with my marketing and my strategy is it's very one to one and it's very tailored. So what I'd like to
Hmm.
do long term, whether it's building out Balbert or building out as like a consultancy, is I want to replicate the system because anyone in the world with the right mindset and some marketing knowledge can start a company named after them, one to one podcast, one to one network, build their book of business, and in a perfect world, Balbert Marketing would handle fulfillment so they wouldn't have to worry about the invoicing and all the nitty gritty. And honestly, I don't even know why I'm saying this on a podcast because I'm like giving away the secret of something I'm probably going to do 5 years down the road. If you have the wherewithal to do it right now, you should. But I want
Yeah.
marketing sales reps that have the ability to build their own book of business, but don't have to worry about the crazy risk and the fulfillment of being an entrepreneur so they can
Hmm.
go and do what they do best in networking and sales. And then Balbert would have the ecosystem to fulfill the orders, but it would still be their clients. So again, this is half-baked shower thoughts,
Yeah.
but I really think this is kind of the future of what I'm trying to do with my company.
That's awesome. And I've tried to become a student of the game per se, and just a couple different points that you've made here along the last 28 minutes, um, I'm realizing that I have some more studying to do, and just to give my podcast longevity, to give my podcast legitimacy, and to always bring because I've always anything that I'm doing currently and previously is to bring as much value and to be of service to others. Was it either in public service or now in business? Is to always bring value and to be of service to others, and just be that genuine. But to do the podcast right, and I've been thinking about. So I listened to the audiobook of Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, and one part of it he talks about his dad's biggest piece of advice to him is don't half-ass anything.
Hmm.
And I've been thinking about that here because I heard him say it again on Instagram. Don't half-ass anything, and be purposeful and so on. So that is one area that, as a student of the game, that I continually try to study on in order to do that. And, I appreciate the fact that you've highlighted some of your efforts, some of your successes, and highlighted your business here today. And I really appreciate that. Any, certain, I'm trying to, the best way to put this, what is your best tip for somebody that's just starting out and they want to kind of dabble in this? Is it, what would be your best couple of tips as far as jumping into doing podcasts?
You're talking about Matthew McConaughey, and
Yeah.
I kind of want my tip to kind of be like a counter argument.
Okay.
Don't half-ass anything. My tip would be don't be afraid to half-ass something, because when I started my music podcast and my music business, I was drinking too much at the time. I was going out too much at the time. The audio quality wasn't good. My ability to ask questions wasn't the best, but I just did it. I just tried. I did something I enjoyed. There wasn't a strategic monetary system in place. I was just doing something I was passionate about. And since I was passionate about it, but didn't have a strategic system, I half-assed it. But it still brought me fulfillment. I still enjoy doing it. So I agree. Okay. You shouldn't go in, I'm just going to half-ass this and then walk out. I'm going to show up to work and I'm not a good stand-up comedian, but there's a bit I used to do where I'd walk on stage and I'd text for about 20, 30 seconds. And then I'd scream, what? You don't just clock in as soon as you get to work, do you? And the thing is, like, I don't recommend half-assing things, but I do recommend trying it without having to have this. You don't need to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be good. And if you don't try it because you think, I'm going to fail, you failed by not trying. So again, maybe I would use a different term than half-assing, but let's just say it, like half-ass something. See if you enjoy it, because if you half-ass it and you enjoy it, guess what happens? You end up bringing the other ass into play.
Bring the other ass cheek in.
Because it's something you love doing.
Yeah, and it's getting rid of that safety net. It's jumping off all the cliches, jumping off the cliff without a parachute, and just doing it. And that is an important takeaway, super important takeaway. Just do. If there's something you want to do, just do it. And I have found quite a few people that have talked about podcasting and putting themselves out there, or even if it's social content and just letting it fly. And there is a lot of validity to what you were saying.
What other problems in this world do you want to solve? we don't even have to solve them right now. I'm just curious as the kind of what kind of problems you like to solve.
I tell you what. So one of my crusades, I guess, is and I've been talking about it here recently, is, I spent all the years that I did in public service or civil service, and I watched people that would work 30 and 35 years. So they get to their retirement. They just, in their last 3 or 4 years, they're just struggling. They hate coming to work. They don't enjoy what they're doing anymore, but they want to get that state retirement, and they're defeated. And I looked at that after 19 years and was like, I don't want to be like that. There's got to be more fulfillment to life than just getting to retirement and then now what, you wait to die. So my whole message recently has been, if you want to make a change, make a change. There's so much opportunity in the world right now. There's business opportunity and career opportunity, and there's no boundaries because we're all digital and social, and just do it. If it doesn't work, well, it doesn't work. Try something else. And man, I tell you what, I wish these opportunities were there 20 years ago, because things would have been, I joked to my wife, I said, instead of getting the worthless 4-year degree that I did get, I would have done it in marketing and learned about marketing and social media marketing and sales, just like you were doing, because I think that, and when I first started this, I probably would have not have been saying this, but there's real opportunity there. So that's my current message here recently.
I'm with you 100%. They say most businesses fail. I was talking about this on another podcast. They say most businesses fail. I don't know the numbers. Maybe that's true. I
Hmm.
think that's really pessimistic. And I think
Right.
if you're failing in business, it's because you're too tunnel visioned to
Yeah.
realize that there might be an opportunity here, or maybe you want to pivot your business and do something different.
Right.
When I'm thinking about failure, I'm thinking, okay, so I failed at this. Let's use this as a step on the ladder to success, right? It's a cliche analogy, right? But imagine like you've got a ladder, all your failures are still steps. So you can
Yes.
fall off the ladder because you didn't take the failure and create a new step, or you can create a new step. So it's like most businesses fail. That might be true. I don't really think so. I think that
Right.
if you're just think it's a mindset thing, and that's why
Yes.
I'm with you in the fact that you just kind of got to do it and you just got to figure it out.
Yeah. No, 100%. You're 100% right. It's, you can say fail forward, or, go ahead and fail and learn from it and keep going. There's a lot to be learned from there with that. Well, Ben, I'm always mindful of my guest time, and I love the conversation, and I'd love to have you on again just to shoot around these different topics and stuff. If anybody wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to connect with Ben Albert?
Yeah, so there's a million and one ways. If you don't mind, we'll put my LinkedIn in the show notes because
Yeah.
LinkedIn's great. I like to seeing a face to the name. I like being able to DM and have like a text related convo. Set up a
Okay.
Zoom if anybody
Yeah.
wants to chat one on one. But in terms of checking me out, the podcast is called Rochester Groovecast.
Hmm.
Groove CAST. So there's Rochester Groovecast. There's Rochester Business Connections. Again, Rochester Business Connections. Domain name gold. You can just Google search Rochester Business Connections and I come up. Again, domain name gold that I landed that one. So check me out there. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm all about one-to-ones. I'm all about networking. I'm all about coming to your event, speaking at your event, attending your event. So honestly, like I'm saying this genuinely, reach out to me. Let's chat and let's see where it goes, man. I'm happy that you and I met, Jason, and I
Yeah.
hope that I can
Absolutely.
meet some more people that listen to your show.
No, no, I appreciate you taking the time and coming and talking to me. It's been super enlightening to me. And a lot of what you said just man, rang some notes for me in my own head that, next time I'm awake at 3 a.m. processing, I'll be thinking about this conversation. So with
Cool.
that, Ben, thank you again for your time. I appreciate all of your input and sharing your experiences and your insight into podcasting and marketing. And with that, everyone, please drop a comment. Let us know what you think. Share it with anyone that you might think would get any value out of this. And again, just we'd love to hear your comments and how you think it went. So with that, everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a great day.